Today on Commander Replay, we play the most aggressive deck in the world, 45 creature Aurelia. Can Tariel, Reckoner of Souls, Doran the Siege Tower, or Gonti, Lord of Luxury find a way to stop the merciless onslaught from Aurelia? Find out next on Commander Replay. Alright, welcome back everyone, playing some Aurelia All Threats, aka 45 creature Aurelia. Our opening hand is okay. The Sol Ring makes it okay. The rest of it is kinda suspect, but there is an Iroas in our hand, so that's a thing. With 45 creatures, we should draw into more creatures pretty soon, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep this, even though I'm not completely in love with his opening hand. Let's take a look at what our opponents are playing. First up, we have Tariel, Reckoner of Souls, is 4 red, black, white for a 4/7 flying vigilance. Choose a creature card at random from target opponent's graveyard. Put that card onto the battlefield under your control. I played a little bit of Tariel, so obviously it's going to be a graveyard-focused deck, and they're going to want to get opponent's creatures into the graveyard. I found Tariel a little bit difficult to build around. Personally, I think it's just a little bit expensive at 7 mana for what it does. It takes a really long time for it to get into play, and you need to do a lot of setup to get it there, so Tariel, Reckoner of Souls, not my favorite thing ever. Our turn 1, we draw a Hainwar Garrison. That's actually pretty good. Now I'm liking this hand a little bit better because we have an early threat. Play this Flooded Strand, crack the Flooded Strand, go find a Plateau. Then play the Sol Ring, and tap out the Sol Ring, and pass. Continuing on our opponents, we have Doran the Siege Tower, very popular card in Standard in its day, is black, green, white for a 0/5. Each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. I haven't actually run into Doran all that much in Commander. I know what it can do. Obviously, the deck is going to want to play a lot of high toughness creatures. I assume that it's going to have a lot of Abzan control cards. Opponent fires off a Worldly Tutor, probably have a ton of tutors in it. I assume probably good stuff with a lot of removal, some really high toughness creatures. That's a Slagworm armor. Seems pretty good in a Doran deck. +0/+6, huh? And a Felwar Stone for the Gonti opponent. There are also a few different ways that they could build around Doran. It could be Treefolk Tribal, it could be Doran Voltron or something like that. Either way, I fully expect that they're going to have a ton of removal. Doran will make this Iroas very not scary when it's in creature form. At least much less scarier than it should be. Could play the Hainwar Garrison right here, which I kind of want to, but just to be efficient with our mana, I'm going to play the Iroas instead. Iroas being indestructible, very difficult to remove, especially on turn 2 of the game, so. And finally, our last opponent is Gonti, Lord of Luxury. 2 black for a 2/3, Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, then put the rest on the bottom of that library in a random order. You may look at that card and cast it as long as it remains exiled, and may spend mana as though it were any type to cast that spell. So you may remember Gonti from when I ran into it in the first episode of EDH Lounge. I'll post a link in the description below. Gonti, typically a mono black good stuff, kind of control heavy deck. So Gonti targets the Doran opponent. Gonna get a card off of them. We draw Angel of Serenity. Nice card, but not something I'm looking for right now. We're going to play our Hainwar Garrison, and then we'll play the Boros Garrison, and bounce our planes. No idea what opponents are arguing about. By the way, on their last turn, Tariel fired off a Tormenting Soul, and discarded an Avatar of Woe. Gonna play a Nim Deathmantle. That is a combo piece if I've ever seen one. Gonti plays a Gauntlet of Power. That's a thing. The thing you don't want to do to a mono black deck is give it lots of mana, so Gonti's now definitely in the lead in this game. Although, we could potentially cast Aurelia right here, and that would make Iroas a creature, and we could just swing in for a crap ton of damage on the Gonti opponent, which seems like probably a pretty good idea. So let's do that. We have red, white, red. We'll play the planes, cast our commander, Iroas becomes a creature, and we're going to swing in super hard at this Gonti opponent. So we're going to get some triggers. We'll put the Aurelia trigger on the bottom. That'll untap the tokens. So, because of the Iroas, all of our creatures have Menace, and all damage that would be dealt to them is prevented. We're in a pretty good spot right here, at least for the time being, until someone fires off a board wipe or something. I assume that Tariel's probably got a million board wipes. Opponent takes 14 damage, goes down to 26. Could hit them for 14 more, and that would put them very low. I actually like that plan a lot. So, attack again, make 2 more tokens. Opponent forgetting about the Menace. Opponent goes down to 12. Nice. 6 commander damage. There's a Day of Judgment. So, to be expected when your board position looks like ours. Luckily, Iroas hangs around. Doran ends up scooping the game. Luckily, we still have the Iroas in play, so it won't take that much to get it back. Ooh, and a Cabal Coffers for the Gonti. Ugh. We do have this Revelark, which can get back the Hainwar Garrison, which will be nice. I'll likely play Revelark in creature form first, especially since there's only one creature in our graveyard. So opponent casts a Nim Deathmantle and reanimates our Hainwire Garrison. I would have preferred that Hainwire Garrison was still in our graveyard, honestly. It does give them a blocker. But opponent's down to 9 life, so they're getting very close to Aurelia territory. Equips up the Hainwire Garrison with a Nim Deathmantle. Ugh. Well, we could just kill him, that should get it back. There's an Umezawa's Jitte. That's always a good time. Unfortunately, we can't turn Iroas into a creature, which is frustrating right now, because I would really love to do that, but the Gonti opponent is down to 1 card in hand, which is good, although they'll be able to get an additional card by recasting Gonti. So I think right now we just recast Aurelia. When in doubt, cast your commander. Actually, we could fire off the Angel of Serenity, but with only 1 creature on board, kinda not great, just that it would get our creature back into our hand, which is exciting. I think I'm just going to play the Ancient Tomb, get Aurelia down, and go after the Gonti opponent. So we'll hit Gonti down to 3, and their life total might be so low now that if they don't catch something meaningful, they're just going to have to scoop the game. So that's kind of the position that I wanted to put him in anyway. I know what Gonti can do late game, and late game Gonti is very scary. Let's see what Tariel's got. Tariel's got a Solemn Simulacrum. That's not the scariest thing they could have done. Great value, but not super threatening. Opponent is going to transmute their Dimir Houseguard. I'm gonna go find something. Dimir Houseguard at 4 mana that can actually be pretty tricky. There's a lot of good cards at 4 mana. It's gonna be a Barter in Blood. That's fine. Opponent's gonna cast a Barter in Blood. So we're gonna have to sacrifice. In all likelihood, it will take us 2 turns to recast our Aurelia, which does buy them just a little bit of time, unless we can find a way to turn Iroas into a creature, which seems pretty unlikely. So Solemn Simulacrum triggers, opponent gets to draw a card. Nim Deathmantle triggers, but the creature went into our graveyard, not our opponent's, so that's a thing. Sword of the Animist. Sword of the Animist is solid. Right here, I'm gonna cast the Revelark. So cast Revelark. I'm gonna cast the Sword of the Animist and equip the Sword of the Animist. Mostly I don't want them to know about the Umezawa's Jitte yet. Umezawa's Jitte is way more threatening than Sword of the Animist, so we're gonna hold that back since we can't attack this turn anyway. Umezawa's Jitte would definitely eat a removal spell, where Sword of the Animist, not as likely. That's the one thing factoring into that decision right there. Although I do realize that there could be a tempo loss. If we recast Aurelia, instead of getting the 2 Umezawa's Jitte triggers, we would get 2 Sword of the Animist triggers, which, if you're just trying to end the game as quickly as possible, the Jitte triggers are where you want to be. But the mana's always good. Cathartic Reunion for the Tariel opponent. Discards Thalia and Revelark. And gonna play an Unburial Rites on the Avatar of Woe. Avatar of Woe is pretty scary. We do have this Angel of Serenity, so Angel of Serenity can solve some problems for us. We do have enough white mana. I just double-checked that. So the Gonti opponent scoops it up. That is good news for us. We draw a Victory's Herald. We'll start by playing the Mountain. The choices here are cast Aurelia and just swing for a ton of damage but lose one of our creatures to Avatar of Woe, or cast the Angel of Serenity and exile the Avatar of Woe, also exile our Hainwire Garrison, but only get in for 5 damage and find a land. I think I like the Aurelia plan better after talking it out. Iroas turns into a creature again, swing everything, we're gonna get a sword trigger, and getting the double sword trigger means that we'll be able to repay the commander tax on Aurelia if they decide to blow Aurelia up, but also if they decide to blow the Revelark up, we just get the Hainwire Garrison back into play. So, opponent's in a very precarious position right now, and we are in the driver's seat for sure. We'll get another planes. Try to get our planes count up in case we run into Ameria. So, opponent goes all the way down to 11. I haven't been running Iroas in that many of my Aurelia decks, and I'm feeling like that's probably a mistake. It definitely fits in this deck, because this deck is just almost entirely creatures, but having 7 power, and as well as the other abilities that Iroas gives you, is really, really powerful. The hardest thing is just making sure that he's a creature. So, opponent plays Swords to Plowshares on the Iroas. That's a good play for sure. Question is what to do about the Revelark and the Aurelia. He could blow up Aurelia during our combat step, and that would be a little bit annoying, but I think we can still work around it. Finishing up on Iroas. Iroas, when it's a creature, is just a powerhouse. And it does awesome things for your creatures in play. If you have Aurelia and Iroas in play, it only takes one other colored permanent to turn it into a creature, which isn't that hard to achieve, but you'd be surprised. We had that one turn earlier where we were trying to get Iroas to be a creature and it wasn't, and it just felt very painful. So that's one of the reasons that I don't always run Iroas, even though I probably should. Opponent plays Unburial Rites on Thalia Heretic Cathar. That's actually a good play because that means when Aurelia comes back in, it's going to come in tapped, and it's not going to be nearly as threatening as if it were untapped. That means we're basically going to lose a turn in the process. However, opponent did just give us a good opportunity to fire off this Angel of Serenity. We draw into a new Benalia, we'll play the new Benalia, get a Scry, see what's coming. Sacred Foundry, putting that to the bottom for sure. Also, actually, the Sword of the Animist will shuffle our library anyway, so probably not hugely relevant. So what I'm going to do right here, if I cast the Angel of Serenity, they can activate the Avatar of Woe in response, and then everything just goes back to their hand. Although I guess if they do that, they lose. So that might be a line of play, actually, just to distract them from the line of play that they actually need to make, which is killing this Aurelia. If he kills Aurelia in response to the Angel, then Aurelia goes to the command zone, Revelark attacks, we still have the Angel of Serenity, and they're just very far behind. I like that plan. So let's do that. So Angel of Serenity coming into play. Opponent's going to activate the Avatar of Woe on Aurelia in response. Seems fair. So tried to throw out the distraction line of play, which is having them blow up the Angel of Serenity in response. So we'll use the Angel to exile the Avatar, the Thalia, and the Hainwar Garrison, just so we can get that back if we need to. And the Weathered Wayfarer we can take care of with Umezawa's Jitte. Use the Angel of Serenity ability. Comes into play tapped, unfortunately. Drop down our Umezawa's Jitte. Equip it up to the Revelark. Swing in, get a Sword of the Animus trigger. Get another planes. The damage hits, opponent goes down to 6. We get some triggers on Umezawa's Jitte. And we're going to shoot down the Weathered Wayfarer, just to make sure that our opponent can't do anything tricky. Opponent casts a Read the Bones, looking for an answer. Put a card on bottom, put 2 on bottom, so didn't find the answer there. Goes down to 4 life in the process. And they scoop it up! So there it is, 45 creature Aurelia getting there. We did have a good start, we did have a Sol Ring start. The Sol Ring start did do a bit for us. But it's not dissimilar from how this deck usually plays, because we're usually able to get one of the meters down pretty quickly. That does a really good job at accelerating our later plays. But yeah, 45 creature Aurelia just keeps slamming threats, and it got us there.